To kick this session off, I wanted to just point out that Co-op Principle 6 encourages cooperation between co-ops. And an obvious way to encourage this is through inter-co-op trade. But what should co-ops use? How should they use it? How should they be taxed? Should they be using national fiat currencies? Should they be using their own types of currencies? Should they be looking for new methods of exchange which don't require traditional currency? And to ask the question also, that couldn't co-ops simply extend mutual credit to each other via a credit exchange, encouraging economic growth of the cooperative sector by providing additional access to capital and incentives to trade with other co-ops? Like we hear all the time, and the next session that's going to happen after this, over in the workshop space with Vivian, who's sitting at the back over there, is going to be about the capital conundrum, which we're always hearing about, how it's so hard to do everything because we don't have access to the money. But like Michael said just now, it's not really about the money. The money supply should not be limited. If we have our own forms of money, then there's no reason why we should be sitting around when we have all of the other things that we need and we just can't find the money that we need to make the beginnings of the flows, to make things go around. So really keen to explore this idea of a co-op coin and mutual credit. And I'll pass you straight over to Matthew, who's also going to poll the audience.
So I just wanted to frame the question a bit. But first of all, a little about me. I'm a software engineer, and I created software for more than 200 local exchange trading systems of a type similar to what Michael pioneered. And in recent years, I also authored the Money and Society MOOC, which I invite everyone here to participate in August. It runs for 4 weeks, a few hours each week. And people give me very good feedback about it. So when you came to this session and the title was Co-op Coin, how many people thought that we're going to talk about cryptocurrencies? Hands up. So we've successfully fooled you into attending this session because it's absolutely not about cryptocurrencies. And since I'm introducing the session, I want to tell you the difference between what a normal cryptocurrency is and a business barter system or a mutual credit system of the type that's being proposed. So in a cryptocurrency, what usually happens, almost always, is that someone will declare the existence of 100 million, billion, trillion tokens, which have no particular reason to be valuable, but a story about why they will be valuable one day in the future. And so the quantity of those tokens is fixed by the blockchain. It can alter over time, like Bitcoin is releasing 6 new Bitcoin every 10 minutes. But the quantity is essentially fixed by an algorithm. And the value of the tokens is absolutely variable. So Bitcoin has gone from 0.0001 of a cent up to nearly $20,000 in January this year. And this is really good to perform some functions of money. For example, the store of value function of money, speculative functions of money. It's somewhat good for payments and settlements, but it doesn't perform other functions of money so well. And in the middle of an economic recession, what we need is the medium of exchange function of money. In an economic recession, the pounds have gone away. They've all been used to pay off the debts, and they've gone out of circulation. And other pounds are being stored offshore by rich people. So there's a shortage of pounds in the economy, and we don't have the ability, because we're not banks, to create new money. In a mutual credit system or a business barter system, you could say that we're creating money, because what the members do is extend credit to each other. If I buy something from you, let me work this out the right way around. If I buy something from you, you'll extend credit to me for buying it, and then later on, you buy something from me, and it comes back the other way. And if I do a trade with you, and you do a trade with me, they cancel out, and actually, you don't need money. All you need is a ledger. And Michael was talking about this earlier. He talked about 2 kinds of money, which I noted in a different place. So we have this token kind of money, where there's a a fixed quantity and a variable price, but when we use credit money, we have a variable quantity because we can issue it and redeem it as needed, and a fixed price. And that fixed price means that the money is much easier to use in trade than, say, Bitcoin. Many traders are reluctant to use Bitcoin because they don't know what it's going to be worth next week. And so when we think of money as credit that we issue to each other, it leads to a very different kind of economics. When it's tokens, the tokens just exist and we pass them around as needed to settle debts. But when the money is credit, it facilitates or even necessitates exchange. And that means not only that I do something for you, but then you do something for me. And so the credit acts as a much better medium of exchange than tokens or pounds, which works much better as a means of settlement. And so the proposal on the table, as I understand it, is that within the cooperative movement, we should be issuing credit to each other and buying things off each other preferentially and easing all of the cash flow needs and creating credit even for investment by supplying ourselves from within the network. This is what the Principle 6 is all about. Co-ops should be trading with each other and they shouldn't need money to do it. I think that's probably my 5 minutes.
Okay, kia ora koutou katoa. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here today on the second half of the second day. I'm sure you must be starting to feel a little bit tired and a little bit hot. How are you going so far? All right, kind of, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here, I really appreciate it. So I'll just introduce myself very briefly so that we keep more of the time for our question and answer. Last year, I completed a PhD in social anthropology in New Zealand, using ethnographic research methods to look at the rise of time banks across Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I'm now currently based in China, where I'm teaching at a university, Jiangnan University in Wuxi. Just a very quick show of hands, how many of you already know what a time bank is? Okay, most of you. Okay, great. So just in case there's a couple of people who might not know, it's briefly a network of people who live in the same city or town and share labour and skills on a reciprocal basis. So ideally, everybody earns and spends time credits. It's a mutual credit system where 1 hour is 1 time credit. You might be familiar with time banks in the United Kingdom. Here, they have tended to have funding, have paid coordinators, and be a little bit more sort of formalised in that way, whereas in New Zealand, most of our time banks have been volunteer-run without funding, and just one example difference being that in New Zealand, members can freely arrange and record their trades with each other, whereas in some of the time banks in the UK, it's all needed to go through a broker who approves each transaction. So even with that same word, the feel and the practice of time banks is different in the United States, New Zealand, Australia, United Kingdom. So for my PhD research, I looked into people's ideas about the progress, success, and failure, or what does success and failure mean in the context of time banking around New Zealand, and why people feel that time banks are necessary. So it was partly about people's efforts to reshape New Zealand society to become a more caring, less rushed, more supportive, and more fair place. And I think very much in line with Ollie's statement yesterday about putting people and the planet before profit. I think many people in the time banking movement in New Zealand would agree with that as a motivation. And after interviewing 20 time bank developers and members in the North Island, as well as members of local communities who knew about the time bank but didn't want to join for various reasons, and also doing a lot of other field work all across New Zealand, I grouped my results into 4 main themes, which were community, debt, activism, and time. And I'll just give one brief example from one of those themes, and I might be able to share a little bit more from my results during the Q&A. So in one chapter of my research, I looked into debt and ideas about obligation, gift, and value. And one of the things that came through quite strongly that I was quite interested in was the way that our social reality is a sort of complex network of obligation and reciprocity, and whatever we choose as a measurement, a unit of measurement for those flows of energy and resources can only ever measure and record a narrow part of what's actually occurring. So as an example, one participant mentioned a tree pruning skills session that he had on his property. So he had 10 overgrown fruit trees that he wanted to learn how to manage better himself. And through the Timebank, he found somebody who was very skilled at pruning fruit trees, and they decided to open this up to the wider membership. So about 10 people came onto his property, and they had a wonderful afternoon of pruning the trees together and doing it thoughtfully and learning how to do it so that all those people would be sort of upskilled and be able to take that knowledge back to their own homes and families. And then when it comes time to record something like that in a Timebank, it can be tricky to really properly map what's happened. So he paid time credits to the person who shared her skills, and then the people who came onto the property paid some time credits to him for facilitating it, and the excess went into a sort of shared bank that the Timebank had, a shared account. But really, he explained that everyone who was part of that afternoon gave skills, everyone learned skills. They freely exchanged companionship, phone numbers were exchanged, new friendships were formed. So there was a lot more happening there, in addition to what you can see now in the Timebank ledger if you look back into their ledger a few years ago. And so it's just one thing that I was quite interested to recount many examples like that. And so I also, as part of my research, I co-founded a Timebank in Dunedin, which was a fantastic learning experience with many ups and downs. We struggled for a few years in this kind of catch-22 of needing to have a sort of fairly a large, diverse network of people with different types of skills, and sort of not being able to build that out of nothing. You can't sort of instantly put together a network of people that's attractive for others to come in and start earning and spending time credits amongst. So we had a lot of sort of ups and downs in our process. We had a pilot phase in which about 20 of us just practiced exchanging time credits with each other for anything that we could think of, and that was very productive. So I think absolutely all phases of experimentation lead to huge outcomes in learning, conversation, and debate. And so no matter how long they last, I think they are successful. We then launched, we had many public events, and there's about 100 active Timebank members in Dunedin now. And with regard to setting up a mutual credit system for co-ops, I think it's important to look for as many historic and contemporary examples as we can. I've really enjoyed in this conference hearing about some of the historic co-ops, the ones that are no longer around and the ones that still persist. And there are historic examples of setting up exchanges or currencies between co-ops as well. And so I think it would be really important to look more into the detail of what worked in those and what didn't. And also just, sort of to think ahead about mapping out ahead of time. If you had, say, 50 different co-ops who were willing to join the exchange and trade with each other, how would they earn credits in the system? How would they spend credits in the system? Is there any likelihood that the credits would maybe build up with some co-ops who can earn easily? And then does that matter? Do you want to take any of that excess and put it into a shared account, or is it necessary to keep it flowing on a more even basis? It's also a lot of work to establish and maintain these systems, and I think we need to be very strategic about that work and how we use our precious unpaid hours for developing these new systems. Okay, thank you.
So I'm Arthur Brock with HOLO or holochain. They're two different things, and we have some branding confusion about that. I apologize. But many of you at this point, you've all heard about blockchain. Some of you have heard Matthew talking up here about holochain, or maybe come across the way to some of the workshop space that we're building some things or exploring some things there. I think I have a different cut on what's possible than what I heard Matthew saying, and that is, to me, the thing that's interesting about cryptocurrencies is not the way that they're implemented so far as gambling chips, but the point of it being a decentralized ledger. I mean, you ended up saying that what we need is a ledger for keeping track of things with each other, but if that's the case, who controls that ledger? And to me, the purpose of holochain is actually to be a neutral platform for peer-to-peer apps, for providing the data integrity for distributed applications, basically. And the way that we encourage people to build currencies on top of holochain is as an accounting system. In fact, there's something that I think would be worth exploring potentially in this space is REA accounting, resource event agent accounting. And what that is it's a new meaning, it was first proposed in 1982. It's been evolving, it's not highly adopted, but there is an ISO standard. For those taking notes, ISO 15944-4. There is an ISO standard for this type of accounting. And the thing that's interesting about it is cross-organizational accounting. Double entry accounting as we know it today means offsetting debits and credits, and debit versus credit is specialized, determined on whether or not it was a liability or an asset or an equity type of thing. When you're moving it up or down, it counts as a debit or credit, blah, blah, blah. All that only makes sense within the confines of one organization. To do cross-organizational accounting, supply chain accounting, value chain accounting, you need a different pattern. That's what REA accounting is about. And I mentioned holochain and HOLO are different. Holochain doesn't have a built-in currency like most blockchains do. HOLO is a project on top of holochain that does have a currency because it is basically about extending hosting services that are powered by holochain to people that are not running holochain. It's kind of the business model of HOLO is to be the Airbnb of the cloud hosting space. Like Airbnb competes with the largest hotel chains in terms of bed nights that it sells, but it's never built a hotel. We think with HOLO, we can compete with the large cloud hosting companies without building a data center by being able to use holochain to tap into the computing power of everybody's peer-to-peer devices. The HOLO actually has a currency, and we've designed the HOLO currency a little bit as a showcase to contrast it from existing cryptocurrencies. It is a cryptocurrency, but it's a mutual credit cryptocurrency, which is what the topic of this session is about, which basically means that some of the accounts can go into debt, that they're essentially the network is extending credit to some people. We extend each other credit. In this case, it's not that all accounts can go into debt. So part of the game in a mutual credit system of managing the credit or the currency supply is how far you can go into debt, or how far who can go into debt. And there's a lot of things that we're doing differently with the HOLO currency, but I don't want to go into that. What I want to stick to here is that I think that it's possible that we can create decentralized ledgers, and we can even create different currencies on them. And by currency in this case, I actually mean unit of account. There can be different types of units of account, and I think that part of the challenge that we really have to overcome as humanity here is to stop trying to boil everything down to one damn number. This reductive thing of trying to reduce everything to dollars or pounds or whatever. Actually, there are reasons to have different types of currencies and different units of account. And the question that the group answered at the end of the last session about why haven't any of these alternative currencies caught on, I have a different definition of currency. I often try to encourage people to hear it like currency, like that currencies are the tools that we use to collectively see currents, to shape, enable, and measure flows together. Flows of goods and services are one part of that. There are other kinds of flows of reputation, that kind of stuff. And like I would, for example, suggest that college degrees, they've caught on. That's a reputation currency, right? It's an alternative currency that actually is widespread. Passports, driver's licenses, certifications, event tickets, all of these things are currencies designed to solve different flow problems. In a network of co-ops, there's probably some different flow problems, some of which we might want to reduce down to just monetary units of account, other ones we might not. there can be reputational currencies and things like that, all of which could actually be recorded on decentralized ledger technology. And I'm biased because we're building a platform for that, obviously. But that I do see that possible. And for me, what I'm interested in is exploring the deeper conversations of what are the flows that we actually need to nourish each other. And I would suggest that the kind of one-dimensional gambling chip system that we've come to think of as economies and currencies and economics tends to lead us toward reductive and extractive relationships to each other. And that if we want to create a ledger system across different cooperatives, we probably don't want those to be extractive, reductive relationships. We probably want to explore some of those deeper patterns. And that's the inquiry that I would invite us to explore.
That was fascinating, Art, and you actually made me understand my own question a little bit better. I think that that's exactly the point, right? I mean, if we just go and try and create a credit system or mutual credit between co-ops, which operates pretty much exactly the same as pounds or dollars, wherever it be, we won't have really done the job, which is why I was trying to ask the question earlier about what are the types of money that we want. So I think what you're saying is until we've understood all of those value flows, then we won't know how to design the currencies that we need. So we need to understand those better. So maybe there is an actual kind of piece of research that's needed there to understand which bits of values would facilitate better flows within the cooperative economy before we start launching into currency design. That was great. We also heard there about, looking at what's worked before, and in a system, like how do we decide what people can earn versus what they spend? What should we do with the excess? Should it go in a shared account? And most importantly, how do we avoid wasting our precious time on trying to set something like this up? Because I think that was a really important thing you pointed out. If we want to have a system like this, then we probably can make it ourselves, but it's not going to cost us nothing because we are going to have to put our time into it. And I think this leads quite directly on to what Matthew wants to talk about, which is maybe skipping some of the questions that we've just identified that we may need to answer that Art has made us aware of here. But because we only have a limited amount of time, I think we need to park that and come back, next time to have with some answers, maybe do some research in the meantime and try and answer that more directly. But if we jump to the point now that maybe we were to have a system of mutual credit between co-ops, let's have a little think about how that would work. And one of the questions being, how might we go about setting it up? How would we find the funds and time to do so? So do you want to kick off with your questions?
Yeah, I just prepared a few questions so we can get a feeling of where we all are in the room. Can you put your hand up if you're in a co-op? Can you keep your hand up if you think you understand business barter and mutual credit clearing? It's quite good. Can you keep your hand up if you think it would work for your co-op to use credit clearing between your co-op and other co-ops in the movement? I didn't see any hands go down. And furthermore, if it didn't work very well the first time, could you imagine your co-op persevering with it a little bit? It's all a big experiment. So there was quite a good response there. I'd like to invite people to shout out the kinds of questions and concerns you might have if your co-op was joining a network, because there should be several. And I believe we could answer them, but it's not the purpose of this session to answer them, only maybe to share them.
So question being, if we were to try and join a mutual credit system between co-ops, what would be your primary concerns about doing so? The things that would make you think perhaps you wouldn't want to, or what could potentially go wrong? Anybody got any immediate thoughts on that? Why wouldn't you join? Go ahead, Nathan.
It would end up overpaying for substandard services than you could find in the broader
overpaying for substandard services that you could find at a broker market. Michael?
Restricting to co-ops for this network seems inappropriate. It's the behavior that makes us cooperative, not the label on our incorporation.
Good point. Vivian at the back there.
Yeah, it might be joined by some flaky co-ops who actually can't pay their bills and they might take a lot of credit and we might end up losing money.
Good point. A friend here.
As we found in some nets that we try to integrate trading balances. Was you hear that?
Trading balances, I think, was the answer. So, yeah, that some people may go way into debt, others don't. One at the front here.
So, could be that we would see that our priority is to buy local rather than necessarily distant co-ops. So, is there enough local supply?
Okay, yeah, the point there is local versus co-op. So already they may prioritize local purchasing, and would that be possible to do that also within the system? Some really good thoughts there.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you for those. And thinking even further forwards, if we were to compare this project to setting up a business barter network of the type I think Michael described in the previous session, it would need to be some kind of, it would probably need to be an office with a few people in. There'd need to be some investment, some skills, some recruitment, some software. And say all of that would cost £100,000 to set up. I've got no idea what it would cost, but let's just say £100,000. Where would that come from? It wouldn't need to be a donation necessarily, but is there somewhere within the co-op movement or some suitable donor or somebody who would be interested in putting that up? Any ideas within the room?
Co-ops UK?
Co-ops UK? Somebody taking notes here?
It's all on video, so.
Esme Fairbairn Foundation, thank you.
Create the asset from the community.
Interesting. Create the asset from the community.
Plunkett Foundation.
Plunkett Foundation? Any others?
If there's 9,000 co-ops in the UK and each contributed on average £10, you'd be £90,000, so you'd be not far off.
Okay. Well, that all starts to sound feasible, doesn't it?
What about funding it through timeshare resources? So you mentioned software, you mentioned a few other things. What if most co-ops do have a tech guy or even a small department basically doing timeshare? So they and we overlap, come in for 6 weeks, that overlaps 3 weeks with the outgoing guy. We're working at the national level for that period, and that way it's all already within the budgets. It's just a work exchange with a shell national that they're participating in, national office.
That sounds suitably smart if it could be worked out. I just wanted to return to what Michael said, that you could fund projects like this from within, not using money at all, but using the goods and services within the network. They could contribute goods and services to the central management effort and receive credits back for that the rest of the network would then reward them for. And of course, there would usually be some kind of transaction fee or membership fee that's putting resources into the center. So I thought that was quite an optimistic answer. I've got one final question before we maybe open things up. What entity within the co-op movement should be responsible for such a management endeavor? And that's assuming, because this is a co-op meeting, that it wouldn't be a global thing, but I'm not ruling anything out. But within the co-op movement, who's there to do that?
I like this question because it gets right to the heart of the issue. Whose job is this? And who are we going to trust to do it? There's no takers. Oh, cooperative finance. One idea here at the front, in the middle there.
Dave, can you stand up and tell people about noncorporate.org and what it wants to do.
Speak very loudly.
It's a workers' co-op, and it enables people to extricate themselves from the corporate sector for all the sections of life. And we're talking to key people in the solidarity economy all the time. And we're introducing the concept of mutual credit. And we've got a network of 500 businesses that we're introducing the concept of mutual credit in. And they're keenish, they're not super keen, but they're interested, they're curious. And so they, put a base of people start something nationally. We need a cooperative courier, like a real courier with bags.
Thanks, Dave. There's a lot of
One at the back there.
energy and passion coming from that direction.
John.
I was just going to suggest the creation of an ad hoc secondary mutual just for that purpose.
Yes.
For the participating co-ops as voting members.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
I
Interesting.
didn't hear that very well.
I couldn't summarize it exactly. I think I heard most of it. I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, I think it would take a lot of capital to accrue enough interest to get the 100 grand, but it's an interesting idea. Quickly in the middle, Bill.
It seems to me if we're going to have a mutual credit system, you also want to have a mutual trade platform between cooperatives. So you've got to be able to put out your wants and your needs to communicate that. And the wants are as important as the needs because anything that collectively is not met is an indication of where you need to invest in the cooperative economy to meet those unmet needs. But it means that everybody who joins that platform, puts up their goods and services, becomes automatically a member of the meta cooperative that is managing that platform and therefore managing the currency or mutual credit system that is supporting that platform. And I'll just say one thing, the reason I'm interested in holochain is that it enables all those shops, if you like, or whatever, to be distributed and owned and kept and managed by the people who are putting them up. There doesn't need to be a central system which is going to cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to buy a building, put the flats, put the servers in, look after it every day. You can distribute that, and every time somebody joins, they bring their capacity, their own capacity, and so it grows naturally. You don't have to worry about scaling or whatever. You're not waiting to AWS to.
Sure, yeah, no, I think the first point, though, is the key point that if you don't have an exchange platform, then you can't see the offers and wants which are going unmet, and that is what facilitates the greater exchange within that economy.
This was the insight that really made Let's what it is, because Let's was presented in Michael's manual as a payment system on the one hand, and then a directory of what everybody does on the other hand. And that's what the business barter systems do as well.
One is an information service, who's got what that needs what.
Yep.
The other one is an information system, which is the networking of the rest of
We're going to have to crack on because we've only got about 7 minutes left, and I did even want to come back to REA accounting, but I'm not sure we're going to get there. There's so much to ask. But Brett Scott's question has risen to the top here, and he's saying one tantalizing attraction to fusing mutual credit-type systems with blockchain digital architectures is to scale them up to the kind of giant global credit network or rhizome. What is the nature of the trade-off between scale and localization? Art, any thoughts?
Me first?
Why not?
Yeah, it's so tricky, I find, even for myself as an architect of holochain to sort of think of magical properties that it's going to, solve all these problems. But I think part of the whole value set of the cooperative frame is relationship at the core. How you do stuff matters as much as what you're doing. Like how it is that we're owning these things cooperatively, running these things cooperatively matters. And so it's easy to lose that if you try to scale too quickly. One of the patterns that we've created in holochain is many different types or layers of membranes, and the fact that holochain applications, each holochain application is a separate holochain, and you can compose them together. So I think you can truly actually get a rhizomatic effect by being able to agglomerate different things without having any one of them become so massively scaled that you lose the capacity to influence the values that it embodies. So if we were talking about a ledger system that may measure different types of things, well, different cultures, countries, economies, co-ops may value measuring different types of things, making different types of flows visible. And if you try to scale to some universal thing, I think you're going to fall back to that reductive pattern of trying to reduce everything down to really simple one-dimensional variables, and then you're actually losing a bunch of the depth of value. One of the things that I talk about in this sense of currency is like, do you remember when food was just food, not fair trade, free range, cage-free, BST-free, hormone-free, organic, locally grown, like all of the different things that we now label these things with to make visible some of these other values that don't reduce just to $1. It matters whether you've sprayed pesticides all over the land. It matters whether you use slave labor. It matters, right? And so the temptation, what you lose in trying to scale something that becomes then one universal expression is you lose the uniqueness of the values you might want to encode in the currencies, in the ledgers, at each scale. What you gain from something like holochain is through anybody who is themselves a member of multiple contexts, they become a bridge, and they can actually connect the different contexts and become a bridge across those different value systems and value flows.
Emma, any thoughts, more thoughts?
Well, in time banking in New Zealand, we've had several attempts and experiments to trade time credits across the time banking network, so from one time bank to another, and those have been difficult to do. I think partly because that labour that goes on of keeping the information list up to date of who offers what and who, what sort of skills and networks are available in the database. Many time banks have had problems with those lists going out of date, so people put the question up, but then they leave town, or they move to a different house and they don't have that need anymore. And so that problem sort of can be magnified if you're trying to do it at the national scale to keep that ledger up to date. And we did have some time credits exchanged between time banks, but it seemed to take quite a lot of conscious effort to make it happen, and it was maybe more about wanting to support that experiment than actually really needing to earn time credits in Dunedin and spend them in Wellington. One of the things that people found enjoyable in time banking was the opportunity and the ability to dip in and out of the system. So to maybe join the time bank, put a request up for perhaps regular lifts to the supermarket, have that need met, and then those two people sort of becoming friends basically, and it just becoming a regular Saturday thing, and they didn't like or want to record it in the time bank anymore, but it was very useful in that way of facilitating the first meeting. And so yeah, I wonder, yeah, as you were saying, like I wonder if at trying to scale it up to that national level, we were kind of trying to force it up because that sounded like a good project rather than it actually coming from the ground up of what people really needed it for.
Yeah. No, I think the currency of just meeting on a Saturday morning and helping each other go shopping is probably a better one than having an international platform to do so.
Yep. But wonderful to meet in the first place.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've given a lot of attention to exactly that problem, but I haven't managed to fully make it work even within the network that I control. And I've been trying to establish standards to make that happen. And I've written a Credit Commons white paper about how it's possible to nest systems if only you could get the protocols right. In answer to the question about what's the trade-off when you scale these systems, if you scale them through nesting them, so you have a mutual credit systems, then that gives you an extra level of politics to do. At every level of the nesting, you've got to do the politics to ensure that the balance of trade is sustainable and that each participant is producing as much as they consume with and for the others. I hope that's a good answer.
Do you, by the politics, you mean the governance?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to jump right to the bottom of the list here. There's some other interesting questions, but some other statements as well. And I wanted to pick up on this one from Bill, which says, does the different credit limit given to participants in a mutual credit system itself form a reputation system?
I would suggest that you could say that, but generally I would say it's the other way around, that you have some kind of reputation system that determines the credit limit. I mean, if you think, I'm not familiar with how it works over here exactly, but in the United States we have a credit rating, which is determined from, it's a reputation currency that's determined from a bunch of your financial behaviors.
It's pretty similar here.
Yeah, and so that credit rating is a reputation currency that operates in parallel with dollars that actually determines the cost and availability of dollars. Right? Like we pretend dollars is a standalone currency, but it determines interest rates, credit limits, and transaction fees, and the kind of access that you actually have, and the performance, the way dollars actually perform when you use them changes based on your credit limit, right? And so in a mutual credit currency, well, it totally depends. Some mutual credit currencies don't manage credit limits at all, like in the original kind of pure Let's form. But if you're building like a crypto ledger that is going to have some mutual forms of enforcement, then you would encode in there something about past behavior, or whether that's past earnings, or that's past value, that's past seniority, that's contribution, that's advising, that's mentoring, whatever the things are that you want to measure. In fact, I actually think that, just if I can extend the question one bit, I think that like triple bottom line accounting is impossible in practice to internalize in an organization. You simply can never internalize all the complexity of your externalities. It just can't happen. But if you have external feedback loops about that, you could take this credit rating type of thing, turn it into a triple credit rating, actually get feedback about your environmental impact by actual metrics of inputs and outputs, also environmental watchdog groups, get feedback from your community about your impact on people, employees, vendors, customers, and also then have the normal credit rating for your profit type of stuff. If you then tune those things to the cost of your money, like if you make environmental messes, we charge you higher transaction fees every time you touch money because we have to clean up after you. If you have a good people rating, then that affects your interest rate. Like maybe you actually have a negative interest rate. We will pay you to borrow money to grow your business because we like what you're doing so much. Like you could actually make triple bottom line currency with these kinds of reputation systems, which I think is far more feasible than triple bottom line accounting. Lets the business manage their cost of money by managing their relationships, and the feedback loops come from the outside.
Fascinating. I like that a lot.
I love that design too.
I think we're going to leave it there because that's such a great point to finish on, and we're already a few minutes over time for tea. So unless there's anything else burning that you wanted to share.
Can I plug Thomas Beck?
Greco's book. For those interested in this subject in general, there's a great book, The End of Money and the Future of Civilization by Tom Greco.
Emma.
Can I just make a quick point? I think it's we've got to be careful when talking about credit limits and earning and spending in each group or organisation or individual, trying to keep that in balance, that we don't bring over sort of too many ideas from the sort of meritocracy-based capitalism that we have. Like, for example, I interviewed a young single mother in a time bank who'd gone 20 credits below zero because she'd spent a lot of credits on babysitting for her son, which was benefiting her and her son and the time bank members who became friends with her. And she stopped using it at that point because she felt bad. She felt guilty when she logged into her time bank account. And this is even, so she felt, like she was sort of getting too much help, basically. But our lives go in these sort of up and down flows. She might have needed that help for years. Does that really matter? Like, work and exchange is still happening within the time bank. She was also at the same time volunteering several hours a week as a volunteer DJ at her community radio station. She was volunteering at a hospice. She was doing a lot to give back. She'd even worked as a time bank coordinator for 1 year. So even though she was quite steeped in this philosophy of time banking, she's still, on a personal level, just her heart sort of dropped when she'd log in and see the negative 20. So we just, need to think carefully about what kind of assumptions and behaviours we might be carrying in from our existing practices around money.
Absolutely, it was a really good point, well made. I like that. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, the co-op coin, or this kind of mutual credit idea, is one of the key projects of the Open Co-op. And if you want to track what we're doing, and we're going to try and track what everybody else is doing, you can go to open.coop/collaborate, and you'll see the list of projects we're working on, and I invite you to come and get involved.